Does Samsung's new Galaxy S23 destroy the iPhone 14? Well, I'm gonna find out in this video by comparing everything, including the designs, the displays, the cameras, the performance, the ports, everything. Now, what makes this comparison really simple is the price. They're both $800 and they both start at 128 gigs of storage. However, it looks like the S23 does get some extras. For example, it has an extra camera on the back, which the iPhone 14 does not have. That's one of the biggest downsides. So that's gonna be a big deal when we get into the camera comparison. Now, in terms of the design, I love what Samsung did with the S23. I love how everything is flat. The glass on the back, the glass on the front, flat, just like the iPhone 14. However, they kind of gave a nice little curve to the sides, the actual frame, so it feels really nice and grippy in your hands compared to the completely flat sides on the 14. I also like how they have the buttons all on one side, so volume rocker right here and the power button right next to it, compared to the iPhone, which it has it on the other side, which is a little bit harder to change the volume if you're right-handed. And of course, we have the USB-C port on the S23, which is awesome compared to the Lightning, which is gonna be dead as soon as the iPhone 15. Now, probably the worst thing about the iPhone 14 is the notch that is still here, super annoying compared to this really nice hole punch, really slim. And of course, the notch is there because of Face ID, which I personally prefer because look at that. As soon as you open it, it just automatically unlocks it. Super convenient, very nice compared to fingerprint scanner on the S23, which is also very nice and snappy, but it's just not as good as Face ID. Now, before we get into the huge display differences, I've got to tell you about today's sponsor, the 1-inch wallet for your iPhone, which is a crypto wallet that's not like the others out there where you're risking your crypto. This one is non-custodial, which means it's safe and secure because they don't own your crypto in their exchange. It's actually stored on your own personal wallet, and all transactions are protected as the wallet parses call data, showing you what's happening in a user-friendly manner. It supports hundreds of tokens across a bunch of networks like Ethereum, BNB Chain, Polygon, and more, so you can use it to store, send, and receive crypto. It even supports secure backup to Apple iCloud, so you can install the app on another device to get access over iCloud. And you can easily import wallets by scanning a private key string or seed phrase within your camera app, which it's incredibly simple and easy. So go ahead and check out the 1-inch wallet by using the links in the description below. Now, getting into the display differences, the first thing that stands out instantly is the difference in bezels. The S23 has slimmer bezels by a lot. Look how thick these ones are on the iPhone 14. And the nice thing about the S23 is that it actually has the same display that you get on the S23 Ultra, which means that you have up to 1750 peak nit brightness compared to only 1200 peak on the iPhone 14. And even in terms of the typical brightness that you would use all the time, the iPhone 14 only goes up to 800 compared to around 1000 on the S23. But you only notice that difference on darker pages because when the full screen is white, the S23 does dim it down a little bit compared to the peak. Now, in terms of the actual display quality, they're both 6.1-inch OLEDs, but the iPhone does have a slight resolution boost, 2.5K compared to 2.3 on the S23. And now the final point is the most important because the iPhone 14 only has a 60 Hz display, which is a deal breaker for me because I'm used to ProMotion on the 14 Pro model, so I would never buy a 60 Hz phone like this. And the S23, of course, has 120 Hz adaptive refresh rate support. This kills it in terms of the display. And now playing HDR video on YouTube, the S23 is absolutely smoking the iPhone. It's getting brighter, everything looks better, more colorful, huge difference in HDR. I mean, right here, the iPhone 14 just looks so flat. So in terms of overall display quality, the S23 just destroys the iPhone. And now I'm really curious to hear the speaker difference because this is something that matters a lot to me, so let's hear it. And wow, surprisingly, the iPhone 14 actually sounds a lot better. It's louder, the brights are sharper, the bass seems a little bit deeper as well, where the S23 is a little bit more muted and kind of more punchy instead of having deep bass. So the iPhone wins here. And now let's get into performance, starting off with Geekbench 5. Yes, I said 5 because there is the 6, which is more real world, but I want to test both of them. So let's start with Geekbench 5. Now the big deal with the iPhone 14 is that unlike the 14 Pro, we have the old A15 Bionic chip, not the new A16. Now, however, we do get the 5-core version of the A15, which is great for the GPU test, but it is a little bit disappointing. On the S23, we have the brand new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is the same as you get with the Ultra, so no sacrifice there. And the final difference is that the S23 has 8 gigs of RAM compared to 6 on the iPhone 14. So let's run the CPU benchmark. And wow, I was not expecting this to happen. The S23 is actually faster in terms of the multi-core score is 4.6% faster, but the iPhone is still better in terms of single core, 11% faster. Wow, I was not expecting an Android device to beat an iPhone chip. Now, keep in mind, this is the old Geekbench 5. Now let's test the new Geekbench 6, which the developers said is much more realistic because they're changing the way they do multi-core to make it actually be real world. So let's go ahead and run the CPU test. And there you go, Geekbench 6 is done, and now the iPhone with the old A15 chip is faster than the brand new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 in multi-core, 5% faster, and then in single core, it got even faster than before, 15% faster than the S23 chip. And now let's get into comparing the graphics performance, with the first test being GFXbench, specifically the 1440p Aztec Ruins high tier off-screen test, so that way the refresh rate does not mess with it. Let's run it. And wow, that's actually a big difference. But before I show you guys that, I've got to talk about this. The Magic Stand case from our partner CaseQ, which basically combines the best and most wanted aspects of a case into one. You've not only got a great and durable design with strong MagSafe magnets built in, but the MagSafe ring is literally on a hinge, so you can use it as a finger grip or a 40 to 120 degree stand. And the best part is that it folds back completely flush with the case, so it doesn't interfere with any other MagSafe chargers or accessories, so check out the link and all the discount info in the video description below. The S23's graphics in this test is 26% faster, 60 FPS compared to 47, so it is a better gaming device according to this test. But let's also run 3D Mark's Wildlife Extreme test. And there you go, Wildlife Extreme Unlimited, let's run. And whoa, we got the scores in. The S23 is 41% faster than the iPhone, 22.6 FPS compared to 16. That is a big difference. So I'd say overall the S23 is better in terms of performance, especially because of that graphics being so powerful. And now I do want to mention the actual speed of web browsing, or the snappiness, which depends on the real world single core performance. So let's go ahead and run this test. And what in the world? The S23 only got 87 runs per minute compared to 342 on the iPhone, which is a lot better. So this looks a little bit suspect to me, so I'm gonna run it on the Samsung web browser. And look at that, 131, better, but still way behind the iPhone. So I think it's just Safari on the iPhone being insanely optimized to work with this chip, because Apple makes both the iPhone and the chip, the software, everything, while Samsung just makes the device, and they have to rely on Qualcomm and optimization stuff, so that's why we're seeing the difference. And now one thing you're probably noticing right now is the always on display on the S23, which is awesome, I love it, and the iPhone 14 does not have it, which is a big disappointment. In fact, I actually had a friend who asked how to turn on his always-on display on his iPhone 14. I had to tell him bad news because it's only on the Pro. And now in terms of the battery, the S23 has one that's 19% larger. However, because of iOS optimization, the iPhone actually gets a little bit better battery life. And the S23 does support 25-watt charging instead of 20 on the iPhone. And the advantages don't stop there for the S23 because it supports Wi-Fi 6E instead of 6 and Bluetooth 5.3 instead of 5.0, so even better. And now let's finally get into the cameras, and once again you can see the extra telephoto lens on the S23, and as you can see, it greatly improves zoom detail shots. And as far as the main camera, the iPhone still has the regular 12 megapixel sensor. It doesn't get the 48 megapixel from the Pro compared to a 50 megapixel sensor on the S23. So the detail is just so much better, especially if you're cropping in. And as far as the ultra wide camera, it's 12 megapixel on both, as well as 12 on the selfie cameras. So let us know which one you think does better in those shots down below. Now, of course, specs don't mean that much, so to test it out, we're actually going to be doing a blind camera comparison where I'm going to take a bunch of photos with both of these phones, including the Pixel 7 Pro, and we're going to have Max and Angelica see which one they like better, completely blind, so subscribe so you don't miss out on that video. And now to answer the original question, does the Galaxy S23 destroy the iPhone 14? And I've got to say that yes, it absolutely does. They're both the same price, but you get so many more features with the S23. You get a better display, you get the always-on display feature, you get 120 Hz refresh rate, you get a chip that's faster, especially for graphics, you get much better cameras, you get modern wireless specs, you just get a much better phone, especially the USB-C port. So I would say definitely buy the S23 over the iPhone. And if you're looking at this thing, just go for the 14 Pro or even the 13 Pro, which is better than this one. So that is what I think about this comparison. Let me know what you thought down in the comment section below, and definitely click the circle above to subscribe for more videos like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.